All right. How is everybody doing? Can you guys see and hear me okay?
Hear you great, Kurt.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to our special event this evening, Rising Interest Rates, Price Corrections, and Changing Market Conditions. So before we get started and I introduce our panel for this evening, quick disclaimer that we are not accountants, lawyers, nor professionals, and the information we provide you is strictly from education, mentorship, and 50 plus years of investing experience. So when needed, please seek professional advice. Also, I'm going to ask you guys a favor. Like always, if you guys are already shifted over to panelists, please turn on your cameras so we can see you. Thank you, Brian and Allison and Sam, and I see Brad and Andrew. Winnie, I feel like that old show, for those of us old enough, I can't remember the name of it, where Reading Rainbow, where they call it all the names of the people that they see, but that's what I feel like right now. So if you can turn on your cameras, that would be awesome. And for those of you that aren't panelists yet and just joining us, as soon as I have a moment, I will shift you over so you can join us on camera as well. So we have a couple agreements for this evening and for all webinars that we do to make sure everybody gets the most out of them. First thing is, make sure you take notes. Also, please either raise your hand if you're on video or use the chat or Q&A feature in the webinar in order to ask questions. And also make sure you participate throughout the training. You're going to get the most out of tonight just by participating. This is very different. I only have a couple slides to share, introduce our panel, and then it's up to you guys to make tonight what you wanted. Asking questions about the market, what's happening with interest rates, etc. Okay, so make sure you guys participate throughout. Again, make sure your cameras are on and make sure you have fun. So with that, I would like to now introduce you to our panel. So first we have Shelly. Shelly, if you can wave. And Shelly, would you mind just telling everybody maybe a 30-second quick introduction of yourself?
Oh, yes, certainly. Some of you know who I am. My name is Shelly Hagan. I live in Calgary, Alberta. I started my little adventure in real estate investing in Regina, Saskatchewan. Started there, owned properties in Gatineau, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, as well as I've been investing in the United States since probably about 2003. I actually lived in Dallas and in Phoenix, properties in Phoenix and in Las Vegas, Detroit. I did mostly wholesaling in Dallas. I never held anything long-term there at the time. And I had a little bit of business in New Orleans after Katrina. But I've done a wide variety of different things. Look forward to chatting with you folks tonight.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shelly. And next we have Rob. Rob, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. I got into real estate starting in about 2009, 2010. Started taking classes and learning about how to do it in 2009 and bought my first building in 2010. I've got property, or I had property in Windsor, Niagara Falls, Ottawa, Phoenix, Buffalo. I got into this whole real estate investment because of the fact that I'm self-employed. In 2008, the market crash, did my savings in, and I needed to find another way to be able to retire. And so I went back to school and learned how to do this.
Awesome. And next we also have Robert, who a lot of you I'm sure know. Robert, if you do a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob. I am from Montreal. I am probably the only Quebecer in the room. Although Shelly is invested in Quebec, I try to steer clear of Quebec as much as possible, even though I live here. Most of my investing has been in Ontario and in the Maritimes, and worked on a myriad of strategies like private lending, multifamily, BRRRRs, flips, and rent to own. That's where I got my start back in 2017.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. And next we have Nina.
Hey everyone, Nina McNamara here from not so sunny Drumheller, Alberta today. I got my start right around the same time Rob did, about 2009. I actually acquired a couple properties first and realized I had no idea what I was doing. So I latched onto some education and took a whole bunch of courses, and since then have done lease options, some flipping, wholesaling. I'm now doing short-term rentals. I also have a self-storage business. And yeah, I enjoy it all.
Awesome, thank you. And last, we have me. I started investing in real estate in 2007. Some of you know, lost money in that deal and actually started trading from 2009 to 2017 and came back to the wonderful world of real estate investing in 2019 with a focus on multifamily and commercial properties. So since I've known all the panel for several years, I have a little surprise for them that none of them know about. So before we get in, I'm going to give them a proper introduction. So first, in the top left, 20 plus years investing experience, we have the wholesale queen, Shelley. Beside her, Robert, one of the most creative investors that I've ever met. I like to call him Dr. Creative. Beside him, Robert, with over 100 units under management, I like to call him Mr. Multifamily. And underneath Shelley, we have Nina. And as she mentioned, she is the STR, a short-term rental specialist. And myself, I go by the numbers guy. So we will be your panelists for this evening. Ask us questions, anything about this market. So let's talk about where the market is right now. So a lot of you might have seen stories in the news talking about the real estate market. I just have a couple of quick little articles that I pulled out. Some of you guys might have seen these from last week, but I want this to kind of spur questions that you might have, concerns that you might have about the market. So obviously we're seeing banking regulators tightening some real estate loan rules amid rising rates. We're seeing mortgage rates forecasting to increase by 1.75%, possibly as high as 3.25%. We're seeing that this is the least affordable real estate market in a generation. We're also seeing that qualifying for the stress test has moved up almost a full percent. In addition to that, home sales have fallen month over month. We're seeing more properties listed up month over month. And we're also seeing rental rates also rising. So a lot's happening right now in the real estate market. And I know for some of you, this might make you scared. How many people, either raise your hands, type in the chat, are a little trepidatious, fearful, worried, or uncertain about this market right now? Raise your hand if you're on camera. Type in chat, yes, we want you guys to start participating now. See a couple of hands up. A little fear, a little uncertainty. So some of you might be looking at the market like this guy. So one of the reasons why we wanted to do this webinar, actually, Chris, I believe he was on, I saw him pop on, not sure if he's still on, suggested this topic, just feedback from members of our council, members of our community. So we want to try to overcome these fears together. And in order to do that, we need you guys to do us a favor tonight and take advantage of the next 15 minutes and ask questions. So now the next 50 minutes belongs to you guys. This is your opportunity to ask the panel of investors. And again, as I mentioned, combined over 50 years of real estate investing experience, Canada, US, multiple strategies, multiple market cycles. So this is your chance to learn what you can do to kind of navigate what we're going through right now. So I will open up the floor. While I do that, I'm going to bring those of you that are not yet panelists into panelists so you guys can share your cameras and start asking questions. Just simply raise your hand virtually or physically, or you can raise your hand virtually, and I will kind of act as host and just call on you to answer questions. I do see that we have a couple coming in already, so I'll ask the panel. First one, how does a new investor come into this market today? And any one of you guys that want to take that one, or multiple of you guys want to take that one, fire away.
Well, when you're first starting out, I think one of the best things you have to do at this point is make sure you do your due diligence to make sure that you are going into it with your eyes wide open and knowing the market you're getting into, having your exit strategies, and make sure you do your pre-qualification through a mortgage broker to do that stress test. The Bank of Canada has been doing stress tests for the last few years in anticipation of this coming down the pipe. So that's why we've had this stress test. I don't think it's always been a bad thing, so it can prevent the panic that's happening. So if you can qualify at the 5.25, then we're okay. But again, I think the basis thing is you do your due diligence, make sure you have your exit strategies, and do lots of preparation before you purchase, and run your numbers. Talk to Kurt. Do the numbers guy.
Right. And I think if you're looking at buying rental properties and you have to put down 20 or 25% depending on how big a property you're getting, you may be able to avoid the stress test, but you should still be running your numbers at least 7%. We always call it the James Bond 007. Run it at 7%, because right now investor loans are, creeping up over 5% if you're going to have it as an investor property. And so it's best to be prepared right up front. Build some room in there. If the property cash flow is still at 7%, then you've got a little more, you've taken a little bit more of the risk out of the deal by doing that as well.
One thing you just mentioned, Shelley, that I'm sure a few people on this call don't know. How many people have heard of the 007 or 7% rule? Obviously, I know, Rob, you have. So, Rob, since you're the first one with your hand up, do you want to explain it to those that are on the session tonight that don't know how to use it?
Okay. The 007 rule is essentially a formula where you take a look at your income and your expenses and your cash flow and your financing. And when you're looking at those numbers, okay, the 007 is 7% interest on a 25-year amortization, and it's your annual cost of your mortgage. So you want to be looking at that number as your cost of money when you're doing your numbers at a minimum.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Over the past few years, I know that all of us as panelists heard about the 007 or the 7% rule at some point during our journey in education. But that's something that's really disappeared just because of where rates have been. There wasn't a need to necessarily calculate at 7%. So now that we're in that environment again, it's a great rule to have. So awesome. Thank you for that. And I'm going to move to the next question. How does one take advantage of the current market?
I think that'll be different for any strategy that you're looking at. When we're looking at our multifamily business, where we are investing, we're seeing a lot of people panic selling now. And you go on realtor.com or realtor.ca, and you're seeing a lot of price reduction. And you know what? If you're patient enough, you're going to see them drop until they make sense to buy them. People went in and they overpaid for properties because the interest rates were so low, and now they're having to refinance at much higher rates, and they're paying the price, so they have to sell.
Anybody want to expand on that?
I think you always want to remember SAP. When you're starting to look at real estate, you have to decide on your strategy first. What is it that you want to do in real estate? Pick what you want. Do you want to do rent to own? Do you want to do wholesale? Do you want to do multifamily? Then you start looking at area, your A. Okay, you're looking for an area now where your numbers kind of can work. So if you're looking at rent to own, okay, you're not now going to be looking at a place where the average price is $1 million, because you're not going to be able to find tenants who can actually fit the mold of buying $1 million property that's a starter home. And lastly, you look at P. You don't start looking at property until you've defined the strategy you want to do in the area where the numbers make sense or kind of make sense. After that, you can start looking at property and seeing what you can find in the way of something that will work.
I think you bring up a good point. Both Robs. People are getting desperate to sell, so there's always an opportunity then for an investor. But people are having a real hard time qualifying now. And I have a couple that I'm working with right now. They have really good income. They don't have great credit. They got approved by their bank, but CMHC turned them down. And so they have 5% saved up, plus a little bit more than 5%. So they're actually a very good candidate for rent to own, because they're going to probably be able to qualify with just if they can get 10% saved up over the next 3 years. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people who for rent to own clients as a strategy moving forward. One of the challenges as investors, I'm working the numbers on this, and with the current interest rates being the way they are, there's not as much profit in the deal as I was getting before, when interest rates were close to 3% or below 3%. But there's still lots of good income and better than average income on a rental property with a rent to own deal. So I keep that in mind if that's a strategy you want to look for. Start working on finding those tenant buyers. I prefer to do the tenant first strategy. I find the tenant, and then I find an investor to come in and help me buy the property at that point.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Similar to what Rob and Shelley said too, you're going to come into situations where there's going to be more tenant buyers, possibly coming into some wholesale situations. So we can, in this economy coming up, we can start creating some more additional win-win situations.
Yes, and with those motivated sellers, especially if they're investors, one of the first things I'd be offering them is some kind of seller strategy, seller financing strategy, what vendor take back, VTB, or agreement for sale, an option contract of some kind, something that will help you get into the property through a creative finance strategy versus you come in with all the money yourself. Let's use the seller's equity to help you buy the property. And Rob is going to be teaching the creative finance class this fall to give you some ideas and some tips to help you with that.
Ellie,
don't be
just to jump in for a moment, you mentioned agreement for sale, and a lot of the people that I've been speaking to don't have a clue what that is. Can you expand on that?
So very good question. So vendor take back and agreement for sale are very similar. And people always ask me, what's the difference? With a vendor take back, I take title to the property, and either the seller holds a first mortgage or perhaps a second mortgage for me on the property from their equity. With an agreement for sale, the seller retains the title and I control the property, but I don't own it. And in essence, they become financing, and my agreement for sale contract acts like a contract, like a mortgage in a lot of ways. And I start making payments on the property to them and pay down my equity, and then eventually I'll refinance and hold the property or I'll sell it. And I get a limited power of attorney, which allows me some flexibility if I want to get out of that property, sooner than I had originally planned. So they're both excellent strategies. And a lot of people have said to me that agreement for sales don't work in Ontario. They do. They work all over the country. I wouldn't recommend doing them in British Columbia, because the Land Titles Act actually, if you register an agreement for sale on title, it enacts the land transfer fees right away, which it doesn't in Ontario or Quebec. And, why would you pay the land transfer fees when you don't own title to the property yet? So, yeah, I would use an option contract there instead. So those are the major differences.
Okay. Awesome. I'm going to pull a couple. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Rob, go
yeah.
ahead.
The other thing that people have to get a comfort level with as they start to invest is investing outside their home market, because in their home market, the prices and the economic climate may not be conducive to the strategy that they want to do. You need to stretch your thinking and go to markets where numbers actually work. And it's a hard thing to start, because everybody wants to buy near where they live, where they can see the property. But I can tell you now, most of my properties that I've bought, I have been bought sight unseen. I'm relying on building inspectors and real estate agents to tell me what the property is about, and I'm relying on an inspection to know that I'm getting a good deal. I bought in Phoenix, and I've never been to Phoenix. I bought in Windsor, and I had never been to Windsor. You have to get comfortable with leaving your home market.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because I hear that a lot with people being nervous or scared to invest outside the market. And it's really about, building the right team, as you said. And with technology the way it is nowadays, it's even easier than it was, 10, 15 years ago to do that and invest in other markets without actually ever going there. Another question that seems to be quite popular, just kind of scrolling through the chat, are do we continue with variable rate deals, or do we try to lock in longer term on financing?
Very good question. Right now, the variable rate interest rates are cheaper, so it helps people get in faster. It's a little more affordable, but there's some uncertainty with that, right? As the mortgage continues to go up, then or the rates continue to go up, then your payments are going to go up. So you have to build some flexibility in there, and that's why, again, doing your analysis on that higher interest rate to make sure you have the flexibility there to make those larger payments. If you lock in, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you're set for the next, say 5 years, if you lock in for a 5-year term. Historically, in the past, if you got into a variable rate interest mortgage, then you tended to pay less interest over time, because it does fluctuate and go up and down. You just have to build to ride it out.
I've always been contrarian about interest rates. I've always done fixed as opposed to variable. And the reason I do is it guarantees my costs. If I have to pay a little bit more in interest, I do, knowing what my costs are for the next 3 or 5 years. When I do a 3-year RTO, I get a 3-year fixed rate mortgage. I don't fool around with saving a few dollars a month. I lock in my costs, and I know what my cash flow is.
I think that's important as an investor, so you know what you're going to end up at the end of the day.
A really great resource is ratehub.ca. They actually step it out for you if you were to get a variable versus a term locked in. And then it shows you the differences, but you kind of do save a little bit more with the variable, but you do want to watch if things do start coming up, and then you need to have the option to lock it in. But I agree with Rob. I've done that in the past with my rental properties. I've locked it in so I know each month exactly what my expenses are.
Yeah, we just did the same thing on a refinance where we were variable, and this was a few months ago, and we did locked in. So just before, rates went up. So again, it's just understanding where your cash flow is going to be and controlling that asset versus leaving up to, what changes might happen. Next question. What's the best strategy to find off-market deals in this market? I live in Ottawa, so I can't attend the GTA networking events that we have coming up. So how to find off-market deals in this market?
I was going to say attend investment club meetings. I know there's different ones in Ottawa, meetup groups. Try to meet other wholesalers who are out there marketing and finding deals at this particular point in time. Just talk to your power team. Yeah, pocket listings from realtors before they hit MLS. There's a wide variety of things. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
There we go. I was going to talk about getting in touch with wholesalers in your area. Your wholesalers are actually doing a lot of that work for you. Oh, good night, guys. Just saying good night to the grandkids. The other thing is there are all kinds of online events now. You don't actually have to be physically present to participate in networking meetings and networking activities and events in different cities. You can do that fairly easily. Also, go to the secondary boards. Go to Facebook Marketplace. Go to Kijiji. Go to Craigslist. There are all kinds of sellers trying to sell privately on these types of platforms.
Our property manager actually has come to us with a few off-market deals as well. So, you know, just build your team and build the relationships with them, and they'll come to you with whatever they have available.
Comes back down to your network, everybody.
Yeah, I'd say overall your network, power team, networking groups, wholesalers. The other deals that we've had off market were from our realtors. Yeah.
Another thing to watch is expired listings. I know that the best deal I ever got in my life was because I was watching some listings, and one of them expired, and the property disappeared. And now all of a sudden I was the only person inquiring about it. And I had all the information from the listing, and I contacted the vendor directly a few months later. And he was still looking to sell the property, but was discouraged and very motivated.
Okay, next one we have right here from ARC is, from what I hear, there's a good chance of a 0.75% interest rate hike this month. Do you foresee another interest rate hike besides this one? And do you see the market pull back a bit more?
They are predicting some more interest rate hikes over 2022. So I think once we got this upswing, I do believe there's going to be a couple more coming our way.
I agree.
007, man, use it.
Exactly. I agree as well.
I teach you at income properties.
Okay, next one we have here. If you have money sitting right now, is it best to wait a little while before buying your first rental property? As in wait for interest rates to peak and prices to fall? It's better to wait or just to get started?
When is it ever going to be perfect? You just have to get in and get her done.
It depends on the deal.
Numbers.
Do your diligence.
Do your
depends
numbers.
on
The numbers.
Exactly. And right now, some areas are really high demand for rentals because there's just not enough rental properties out there. You know, it might be worth your while to get in right away. I agree. Same thing. Like, just do it.
You know, and I'd come.
But you know, do your due diligence and be prudent on your due diligence.
Yeah,
And
I'd say
And while your money's sitting there, don't be afraid to go into private lending. And if you got money waiting to get into the market, go into private lending and earn something on that money. Don't just let it sit there at 0.5 of 1%.
So if somebody were to go into private lending, what type of return could they be looking at potentially?
I typically in my private lending on first mortgages, I will get anywhere in the neighborhood of 12%. That's total return, lender fee plus interest rate. And on second mortgages, I'm typically getting in the neighborhood of 15%.
Awesome. And I'd just say, to answer that question, it's impossible to pick the bottom or the top of any market. As somebody that traded for 8 years, no matter how many indicators, no matter how much you look at what's happening, you'll never get it exactly right. So, by waiting, if you have an opportunity that is a good deal for yourself based on your numbers, based on your analysis, your due diligence, taking the right approach, then, now would be the right time for that deal.
If you're going to get into a fix and flip property, you really need to do a lot of research on the market. Because if the market's going down and you're buying, you might have to ride that down before it's going to go up. So you do need to be cautious about that right now, depending where you're at. Every market's a little different. So keep that in mind.
Okay, next couple questions. How do you find multifamily off-market deals? And I think we kind of answered that between wholesalers, networking, and your power team. Unless anybody has anything else to add to that. All
You
right.
can advertise yourself,
Yeah.
Craigslist, wherever, looking for an apartment building, something, if seller financing could be available, something to that effect, some verbiage like that.
Okay, next one. Is it good advice to buy investment property by financing through a hard money lender?
What are the numbers?
Yeah. The answer is
like-
always going to be, it depends on the numbers.
Yeah, and there may be a situation where it's a good deal to get in using hard money, and then you get out using conventional financing and your line of credit and other methods. But if the deal is that good, even a hard money lender could be worthwhile to do, at least to get your foot in that deal.
Especially if you're doing something like a BRRRR, where you're going to get in and then refinance it later. Maybe you get in with hard money, do the renovations, and now you can go get traditional financing with that. So yeah, just depends on the numbers.
The numbers work and how long you want the hard money for that 12, 18%.
Okay, lost audio for a second there. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up if you can. Perfect. Okay. Next one we have here. Do you foresee a prolonged downtrend similar to the 6-year downtrend we saw in the 90s?
I don't, because there's still not enough inventory for the demand. All of the housing stats that I've seen so far says that we have a long-term shortage of housing, and we may see some corrections, we may see some adjustments, but I don't think we're going to see a long-term downtrend.
The market has been so erratic, especially in certain parts of the country where people are going in with like no conditions, $100,000 over. There had to have been a correction at some time, and I think this is that correction.
Okay, next one from Jairus. For the average young Canadian that is graduating from college, university, how would you recommend they get started investing?
Definitely, whenever I work with someone that's single, just out of university, starting their first job, I always recommend they buy a house with a basement suite. Live in the basement, rent out the main floor because we're going to get more income off the main floor. Get into the basement themselves, get a couple of roommates in the basement to help pay the rent, and they can live there for probably, next to nothing, or if not free. And helps them get in. If they don't have their own money to get in, look for a creative solution. Look for an investor who's tired of being an investor, who will do an agreement for sale or vendor take back or something to that effect to help them get in. There's many different ways to get in with no money down. Even when you're in university, if you can find an investor that's willing to sell your property with an agreement for sale with very little money down, great opportunity for a young person to get in and get started. And I have a lot of mentor students that are in their like 20s and early 30s that come to me and say, we signed up for this real estate course, but we really think, I don't know, are we making the right decision? Really, should we be buying real estate? And I just go back to, buying a house with a rental suite, getting the tenants to pay it off for you, and showing them how long-term that real estate will turn into a great asset for them for their retirement long-term down the road, and an asset that they can leverage multiple times and buy multiple properties as they go forward as well.
There's also opportunities like in the education you're going to receive here at CashFlow Tribe that we teach you to wholesale, do flipping and things like that, do joint venture partnerships. You have the knowledge, someone else might have the money at this point, and you can combine your efforts and then make some capital that way and get ready going.
One of the things that you're going to find when you try and do that for the first few times is your investors are going to say, well, what experience do you have, and how can I trust you? And the key is to lean on your team. The key is to say that it's not just you who is doing this. You are involved with a group of people. You have a team of people working with you. You have coaches and mentors who have done this strategy, be it a rent to own or a wholesale or whatever it is, that they've done this many times and that you guys are working together as a team. Make sure that you leverage the benefits of your team rather than try and explain why you can do it yourself when you've never done it.
Again, it goes back to network and having the right people around you that you can leverage not only their knowledge, but also their experience in this business. You know, when we say, or when I said we have 50 plus years of experience, I certainly by far have the least out of this group, but I am a part of a group with 50 plus years of experience. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. Next question. How do I find the right inspector in specific regions? And I think that we could probably expand that question to power team members. So realtors, mortgage brokers, inspectors, appraisers. What's the best way to go about finding them in different markets?
Well,
Comes down to your network again.
yeah, I was just going to say,
Yeah, talk to your fellow investors, people in the tribe, who you've worked with, who they've liked working with, and find that like-minded person to work with.
if you join an investment club or a meetup group in the area, you're going to find all kinds of people related to real estate. Appraisers, inspectors, mortgage brokers, you know, and then if you find a couple of good realtors, the realtors will refer you to appraisers and inspectors, and then mortgage broker, you know, the appraisers are usually set by the lenders, depending on who the lenders are. But yeah, as Nina said, it's all about your network.
Yeah, and for anybody that is scared to talk to people, you're going to have to get over that fear. That was one of the things that held me back when starting. I picked my business partners not only because I knew them, liked them, we had the same goals, but because they were both very or more outgoing than I was. So I figured they could do all the talking to people and I'd just sit behind the computer, run numbers, and everybody would be happy. And I quickly learned that's not the case, that if you really want to grow and expand your business, you do have to step outside of especially that comfort zone and meet people, talk face to face through Zoom, through, you know, the CashFlow Tribe groups as well. So definitely talk to other investors and start networking.
I was a horrible introvert. I sat at my computer and I plugged numbers, and I did not want to talk to people. I did not want to get involved with people. I had to overcome that fear. I had to overcome the fear of speaking in public. I had to overcome the fear of being in groups. I was the person who went to a party and would find the one person who was talking hockey and stick to them all night because I could talk hockey. And you have to overcome these fears and put yourselves in situations where you have to take your game to the next level.
And how many people here have that fear? Either raise hands or type in chat, because you might be a new investor or even you're an experienced investor, that you have that fear of actually saying, you know, I'm a real estate investor, I'm looking for properties in this area. I'm sure a lot of you do, but you have to overcome it. None of us, and I've said this before, none of us were born as investors. So it's something that we all have to learn over time, and that's part of it.
This is a team sport, and you don't have to do it alone. You can align yourself with a partner who can make up for your deficiencies, and you bring something else to the table in a partnership, right? You don't have to do it alone. It's a team sport. You're going to be working with team members, your realtors, your mortgage brokers, your property managers, your wholesalers. So if you are deathly fearful of speaking to people, align yourself with somebody who has that comfort level, who will go out and do the network and meet potential sellers, potential buyers, potential investors. And you can be the numbers person. You can be the money person. There are so many ways of building a business, but I can guarantee you one thing: making excuses will never, ever get you to your goal. It's very simple.
one things that I've done in the past with my mentor students as we have run the dialogue through, I've partnered people up with one another or myself, and we've made the phone calls to one another, talking about the properties, getting the information, and just doing it and repeating it over. The first time I picked up the phone, I was shaking. I swear they could hear my ear on the phone because I was shaking because I was so nervous. I had no idea what I was doing. That was back in 2009. And by the time I kept doing it over again, I didn't need the script. I just knew what to say and what to do. The more you do it, the easier it will come, and it'll just start flowing with you.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. Next question from Miriam. How do you run numbers for real estate?
Oh, there's so many spreadsheets.
There are a lot.
Question. There are a lot of spreadsheets.
There are a lot of spreadsheets. It also depends on the strategy. Like Nina just shared with me today, her spreadsheet that she uses for short-term rentals. We all have our own spreadsheets that we use for multifamily income properties and commercial properties. But definitely you need to start learning about the key performance indicators based on whatever strategy that you want to do, and understand what the minimums are. Like we talked about, rates being one. You have your coverage ratio as well. Cap rates are going to vary depending on the area. Rob talked about on a council call, I think it was last week, Rob, about the GRM and how that's used as well. So it's just really understanding the KPIs based on the strategy that you're using, and then having a spreadsheet or tool that can run those numbers and give you an indication whether or not something's worth putting an offer on.
It's more than just having the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's going to give you green and red, and the spreadsheet's going to say it's a good deal or it's not a good deal. But you have to take the time to learn and understand what the numbers mean for the various strategies. Just because the spreadsheet says it's green, okay, if you're going to turn around and base it on a location where you may not necessarily get the kind of returns that you're looking for, you have to take the time to learn and understand what the meaning of the numbers is and get a feel for what those numbers are.
And yeah, exactly what Rob, when we do income properties, the first part of the class is just about what those key mark indicators are and how to understand them, because they can mean absolutely diddly squat on a piece of paper unless you know what they actually are moving forward, and how you can calculate them on your own without that spreadsheet, how to calculate them manually, then they'll make more sense on the spreadsheet.
Yes, a very good point. And the same thing goes for, as you were saying, for the different strategies too, right? If you're doing a flip, you got to understand the deal, and then the numbers will make sense. But if you don't understand the deal, the numbers really don't make sense. Same with lease options. Every one of them have their own different analyzer tool.
And you have to make sure that you include certain, I don't even want to call them soft costs, but not soft costs. When you get financial statements from vendors, okay, they're going to tell you that their expenses are their insurance, their taxes, and their utilities. Okay, they haven't told you about snow and ice removal. They haven't told you about yard maintenance. They haven't told you about security. They haven't told you about vacancy or management or maintenance. Okay, these are all things that, as you're starting to understand your numbers, you have to understand the hidden things that are in there. I mean, when you're talking about a flip, okay, you start from the ARV and you work backwards, okay, and you have to include in there some contingency, your buying costs, your selling costs, how much you expect to make in profit, okay, in addition to your renovation costs. It's not just about ARV minus renovation and that's my price, okay. You have to start to understand and get a feel for what numbers on buying a property are actually like.
And just to put that into context, I actually received a message from our realtor in Sudbury saying that he found a good potential deal for us. And those hidden costs, once putting those in property management, vacancy, and repairs, that property no longer cash flowed. So you have to be very careful, even working with especially new realtors that may not have a lot of experience working with investors, to factor those costs in yourself, so you don't wind up buying a property, especially in today's market, that actually doesn't cash flow after you close.
And beware of the word pro forma. Pro forma means somebody has built an ideal situation and not necessarily included all of the things you need to consider. But this would be an ideal situation if you were to manage it yourself and you had no vacancy, and the world doesn't work like that.
I was going to mention the exact same thing, because realtors, and I'm not bashing realtors, but their job is to sell the property. So their job is to make the numbers look pretty. They're not, doing it in a bad way. They're just showing you what it would look like as a pro forma. So yeah, you just have to be a detective and get in there and dig out the numbers and come up with things. So what we want to do is we want to have all the expenses accounted for. And then if it cash flows, great. If the expenses are less than that, bonus.
All right, let's move on to the next one. I know we have quite a few questions and comments. I'm trying to get through as many as we can. Question from next one is, if you're taking a fixed mortgage, then will that not cause an issue in penalties when you, or if you want to refinance?
It really depends on your exit strategy. I mean, if you're buying a long-term buy, rent, and hold, that's totally different than if you're buying a property you want to flip. If you're buying a property you want to flip, then the short-term open mortgage is great. If you're doing a rent to own and you have a 3-year term, you can go with a 3-year fixed and you're not going to have penalties. If you need to extend it by a year, everything depends on what you're doing and what your strategy is on how you structure this. If I was doing a flip or a BRRR, I would probably go with an open mortgage. I might go with a fixed open as opposed to a variable open, or I might go with variable open. But I'm always concerned about what my costs are going to be and what my risks are.
It goes back to the numbers game. When you are figuring out your strategy, if there is a possibility, say for example, a rent to own, and your tenant buyer buys out early, have that strategy have those numbers in place that there might be a payout penalty. So you have that aware, whether or not it's going to be a 3-month interest rate payout penalty, or if it's going to be the interest rate differential. So you want to make sure you're aware and educated on that. That I got hit with that one time. I ended up getting $15,000 penalty because there's an IRD. Make sure you account for it. So again, run your numbers, know your strategy, and then base it off of that.
If my tenant buyer,
I was just gonna say, Rod made a really good point about rent owns. If you only plan to hold it for 3 years, don't get a 5-year mortgage, get a 3-year mortgage, because then you don't run into that risk. Mm-hmm. So it is all about what your plan is right up front.
And if your tenant buyer says that, I might be able to do this in 2, then what you do is you get a 2-year mortgage with your option that you're going to renew it for another year. I always make sure that I talk to my tenant buyers and I say, and if they ask that question, it's like, okay, so here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it. But if you say you're going into a 3-year program, we're doing a 3-year program, not a 2.
Things happen too, like you could buy a rental property, get a 5-year mortgage on it, and then something happens and you have to sell it. Those are, as Nina said, try to build those things in just in case, but you can't always plan for everything. And then you're going to have to, deal with the consequences at that time, or sell it to somebody with a agreement for sale, so that until their term runs out on your mortgage, if there's going to be a big interest rate differential, which is happening right now because the interest rates have gone up so much. So just do something creative. You become the bank, hold it for the term, and then ride it out so you don't have that penalty.
And I see we have a stretch of some interesting questions coming up here, so we'll get through these as well. But next one is, with the provincial government doubling the rent increase rate in 2023, does this mean the government is reviewing their bias against landlords? And I'm assuming you're speaking about Ontario. And this is from Maria.
This is one of my pet peeves. The 2.5% increase is a joke. what we have is a previous government that implemented, in addition to rent increase linked to inflation, they capped the maximum increase. It is an absolute farce what is happening in Ontario. Our inflation rate, the government approved lie of an inflation rate is just over 7%. All of us have seen our gas prices, our lumber prices, our contractor prices go up 20-25% or more. We've seen our taxes go up more than 2.5% a year. We've seen our insurance rates. Anyone who has a rental property, an investment property, has seen their insurance rates go up 30% in the last 2 years. We probably are experiencing real inflation of 20 to 25%. The government is hiding behind this because they're looking for votes. Landlords who currently hold property, their interest rate now is going to double. If they're renewing a property now after 5 years that they've held for that 5 years, their interest rates are going to be double what they were. It's a complete joke that people are representing a 2.5% rent increase as unfair to tenants.
Any other comments on that one? I know the three of you are outside of Ontario, but
And I have no strong feelings on the matter.
none at all. Tell us how you really feel. All right, let's move on to the next one. Is it advisable to look toward the US property market? And is there support to do this? And kind of a secondary question to that from somebody else is, as a Canadian, what is the step to buy real estate in the US?
So the US market is taking some of the same hits that the Canadian market is, right? Their interest rates are going up, and in some cases even more so than our interest rates are. So their properties are, in a lot of the markets, are starting to cool, like we have been experiencing here. So again, you need to do your analysis. You analyze a property in the US the exact same way as you would here. The thing is, you need to do your due diligence on each state to determine what are your costs going to be? What are your closing costs down there compared to, Canada? Now, for those of you, us buying in Ontario, you're going to see a huge reduction in the costs, that's closing costs, because most of the states do not have land transfer fees, but they have other hidden costs. So you need to check into that and make sure you're, checking into your insurance rates. Can you get financing? If you're buying a multi-unit, 4 units and up, it's easier to get financing. If you're buying a single family home, more difficult because you're an alien coming into the country to buy properties. And so you need to keep all those things in mind. There's a lot more creative strategies and a lot of ways in the US to buy properties, subject to being one of them. If you're going to be looking across the border, you want to find out about subject to properties. Instead of agreement for sale, you do a contract for deed or a land contract, a land trust contract. And so there's some, there's some nuances that are different, but the fundamentals in real estate are the same. Doesn't matter which country you're in. You still cash flow. You need to do your cash flow analysis.
I just want to add one thing that you really want to make sure you protect yourself down the US is your LLC.
Yes.
They are sue happy down there. They want to sue for everything. So you want to make sure you protect your assets and start out with making sure you have corporations set up in particular states to cover yourself.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Nina, too, because if you get an LLC and the LLC owns the property and it's direct to you, if you don't have any other asset layer between there, then you have to file personal taxes in the United States as well, because the LLC is a flow-through company. So that flows through to whoever the owner is. So I have corporations in the United States. I've been buying properties down there since 2003. So I have a 3-tier structure in the US, the same as I do in Canada, so that it flows from my LLC to a C Corp, so that I don't personally have to file taxes and get a tax ID number, etc.
It's really important if you're going to do business in the States that you take a course specifically designed for Canadians buying US real estate. There are a lot of considerations. The property values down there are amazingly less than they are here. And the rents down there relative to the property value are high. So for example, in Phoenix, okay, my properties are worth in somewhere between 135 and 160,000, but I'm getting $1,000 a month rent on them. Okay, that's great, but you need to understand, as Shelley said, the tax implications between the countries. And so it's very, very, very worthwhile to take a US taxation course, to take a US asset protection course, to take a US course on investment real estate, because they have different rules down there. And if you don't understand the rules properly, the income you earn in the States will automatically flow to you in Canada, and you can't control it. If you structure yourself properly, income you earn in the US can stop at the US border, and you do not have to worry about that income in Canada until you actually bring the money across the border. So highly, highly, highly recommended that if you're going to do business in the States, that you actually educate yourself. This is not a game. You can lose. I have friends who have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by buying in the US and not doing it properly.
And I have a question for you guys, since it kind of came up. What would you say about somebody currently buying or owning property in Canada in their own name instead of in a proper corporate structure?
Well, again, it depends if that's the only property you have and what your income is. You really should be talking to a professional, an accountant who can give you some good advice. Because when I first got into this business myself, Carol, my business partner, and I had decided we were going to buy everything in a corporation. When we went to talk to the accountant said, well, no, because we quit our jobs, we should each buy 6 properties in our personal names and take the income, because we didn't have any income. And we weighed that, both sides, and we decided, because we were going into partnership together, we would put everything through a corporation. But sometimes it might be to your advantage to hold it with from a tax strategy. If you can't afford to set up a corporation to start off with in your personal name, but make sure you have good liability coverage on that. Buy extra insurance and set up a strategy where you're going to move that eventually into a corporation. That could be, for short term when you're first getting started. But if you have a high income job, I would highly not recommend that you buy a property in your personal name, because it's really going to impact your income that much more. You're going to get way better tax breaks strategies in using a corporation, and better protection for you and your family. So whenever possible, we always recommend put it in a corporation. But I do understand, I've had some mentor students that for reasons they have gone and put the first property in their personal name, but then moved it into a corporation later through a bare trust going forward. So, get some good advice in doing that.
The thing you want to also take into account when you are purchasing properties through your corporation and when you're qualifying for a mortgage, there are different interest rates and different qualifications through a corporation versus personal. So you will be tempted to want to buy it privately or personally. But then if you do end up doing that, as Shelley mentioned, do the BARE trust, it's BARE trust. You can talk to your lawyer about that. And what you do is you hold the property and it gets transferred, all the income and expenses transfers through to your corporation. I don't recommend that unless you absolutely have to, but there is a way to protect yourself if you absolutely have to.
And in all honesty, take the time to take a course in asset protection and estate planning. Is very, very important. How you structure things, and the long-term implications of the structures that you choose are they can vary widely. take the time to take a course and understand these things.
And everybody's personal situation is a little different too. You know, what your structure might be compared to mine is could be totally different. It really is going to depend on your family situation. I don't have kids. You know, most of you probably have children. So, you know, then there comes in that other level about putting a trust in place as well for, you know, long-term planning. So, you know, each one of us is different. You really need to get some good counsel.
Okay, another one. I think this is probably for Nina and Shelley. What do you think of Calgary market condos with rental guarantee plan?
What?
I personally don't do condos.
I,
So I'm probably the last person to ask it. And the rental guarantees for how long? 1 year? And then you're stuck with it. It's probably not going to cash flow. Sorry, Dina.
there's one thing that is guaranteed in real estate investing is nothing is guaranteed in real
Right.
estate investing. Okay. If anybody is dangling, I can guarantee you can make this, I call BS. All right. So you're going to have to work at the numbers. Anything, and I'm like Shelley, I don't tend to invest in condos because many reasons. They don't appreciate like a single family home. You're actually really not in control of the property because of the condo board. So you have that possibility as well there. Yeah, and those are the reasons I do them for my short-term rentals. They're great for that. But for an investment, I don't invest in a condo.
But even on the short-term rental, you do arbitrage, so you don't actually own the property, somebody else does.
Exactly.
And, you know, and in most cases, apartments, condo apartments. Now, townhouse is a little different, but on a condo apartment, the condo fees are so exorbitant. I have a friend that's looking to buy a condo, and she was thinking of renting it out for 6 months of the year. Well, then she found out the condo fees were $700 and some a month. Well, there was no profit there. By the time you pay your taxes and everything, and there's a limit as to how much people are going to be willing to pay for a condo, because they're thinking, well, an apartment building only rents for, you know, $1,500. Why would I pay $2,000 for a condo? It's just an apartment. So, yeah, I'm like, I think it sounds like Nina too. We're not good ones to talk about condos.
No.
Condos.
And absolutely beware of pre-construction. Pre-construction is speculation. It's not investment. The people who put their money into pre-construction are gambling on increase in appreciation. They're not basing their strategy on the numbers. So be very, very wary. The other thing about Calgary, unlike if you were looking at Edmonton, Calgary is very, very, very dependent on the energy market. And before you invest in Calgary, I suggest you take a walk downtown Calgary and see how much office space is actually still empty. I was there a couple of years ago, and there's a ton of commercial vacancy. So just be careful with that market. It's very, very transient and fluctuates wildly with very little notice.
Yeah, depends on, certainly oil and gas impacts all of Alberta, including Edmonton. But Edmonton has more blue collar jobs than Calgary has the white collar jobs, for sure. But right now, Calgary and Edmonton are some of the, like probably in Canada, some of the most affordable properties to get into. And there is you know, waiting list for rentals right now. It's very difficult. There's been a lot of inward migration. The city is growing about 2 to 4%. Same with Edmonton over the last couple of years, even during COVID. So there's still people coming here. There's still people moving here. There's still jobs. There's still a lot of activity happening in the market.
Yeah, right now with Calgary, like Shelley just said, there's a wait list to get into rental properties. There's a high rental need right now. We have more people wanting to rent than we have rental properties. So there is a need right now in Calgary. Yeah.
But Calgary, oh, sorry, Nina, go ahead.
That's okay. Go for it, Shelley.
I was just going to say Calgary is a little higher priced than Edmonton, and the rents are a smidge more here because we have more government, not government offices, but high, like banking offices and things like that. Their central offices are in Calgary versus Edmonton. Edmonton is more the government jobs. But for whatever reason, our property values are always a little higher and the rent is just a smidge higher than Edmonton. So they cash flow a little bit better. And we've gone through, as Rob said, we had gone through a downturn with oil and gas back in 2014 and 15, and we never recovered. We didn't have the same turnaround that Vancouver and Toronto have had. Ours has been much slower coming out. So the property values had gone down and they're just slowly starting to come up. They haven't gone exorbitantly high like we've seen in some of the other bigger markets like Toronto and Vancouver.
And like Rob mentioned, in Alberta has some of the most lenient tenancy laws, not lenience, but favors the landlords. We can raise the rent whatever we want every 365 days. We don't have that rental. You can only raise it 2.5%. We can raise it whatever we want.
Alberta is the landlord friendliest province in the country.
Yes. Alberta and Saskatchewan right behind. Very similar. And there's no land transfer tax in either of those provinces.
So we have some ups.
Yeah. So there's some positive here.
So I do
just except for condos.
So I do want to make sure that we value everybody's time that's here. We were scheduled for an hour. There's a lot more questions. How do people raise a hands or type in chat, although I can't see the very bottom of chat because I'm still going through questions here. I've already had a lot of value, learned something new, reinforce something that can help you in your business in the past hour. Awesome. So one thing I do want to make sure that we do is respect everybody's time. So if Rob, Robert, Nina, and Shelley are happy to continue answering questions for maybe next 20 minutes or so, if you guys do have time carved out, that'd be awesome. And I'll ask you guys a favor. If you guys see questions in chat that you can kind of answer in the chat, if they're just like little quick ones, please do so. And that way I'll kind of scroll through the ones that are going to be kind of larger questions that should be more discussed. Now, before we jump into that, there was a couple questions I saw in here about kind of the next steps for those, especially that are new or just want to learn more, hear more from, you know, people like yourself, Shelley, Nina, Rob, and Robert. So we do have a in-person training coming up in Mississauga. So anybody that's in the Toronto area, you can attend. The dates of that training are Saturday, July 16th, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday, July 17th, 8 a.m. to about 3, might go to about 4 p.m., a little bit longer. We will actually be covering a ton of different strategies throughout the 2 days. And actually on the Saturday evening, we'll be doing networking from about 5 p.m. till 9 p.m. So it'll give you guys a chance that are there to network with each other, but also talk to the trainers that will be there. And for your trainers in person, you will have 3 of them there. You'll have Jameson. His specialty is being mostly on cottages and student rentals and also raising capital. So we'll be sharing education about that. And actually this year he's raised over $2 million in investor capital and investing in Saskatchewan and also Ontario. Shelley, who you know, wholesale queen. I'll play the music again, but I don't have it queued up for this slide, unfortunately. And then also Robert Godet will be your other trainer. In addition to that, we will have some special guest speakers. Allison, if you could wave. Allison's been a member of council, has been an amazing investor when it comes to flips and short-term rentals. So she'll be there speaking as well as another member of council, TJ, who actually not only is an investor, but also started a lending business as well as a pawn shop. In addition to that, I believe we have Nina and Rob that will be joining us virtually over the weekend as well. So it is an opportunity to not only network with each other, learn more, those strategies that we can start investing in or continue investing in, in a really fun environment. So there are a couple bonuses for those of you that are going to be going to this. Bonus number one, we will provide lunch. You get to eat. You get to learn and eat. Very important. We'll also be doing some giveaways. I mentioned that we'll be doing networking in the evening. And again, the date's Saturday, July 16th, Sunday, July 17th. Now, for those of you that do want to attend, that don't have tickets already, I know, I think we have a number of people that have tickets. I'm not sure this many people on the call who does, but the investment to attend the class is $497. However, you receive a 30% discount if you purchase your ticket before midnight tomorrow, July 5th, using the promo code early bird pricing. And I will drop the link in the chat for you guys to do that. So the investment for the class is $348. And another bonus, if you have a spouse, a partner, immediate family member, whether that's an adult child, a parent, the ticket price is for 2 people to attend. So just purchase 1 ticket, and that is for 2 of you. And also, if you are a member of council and you'd like to attend, please reach out to either Cara, Tom, Jameson, and then you can find out what your ticket cost is. It's less than this because you guys are members of council. And for anybody that already has plans that weekend and can't attend, we're actually holding the same course again in August, the 13th and 14th in Mississauga as well. So you can go ahead and purchase your ticket now and pick which date works best for you. So again, I will drop the link in the chat for you guys to go ahead and get your tickets. There is limited seating, obviously, because we're in person. Ballroom can't hold everybody. So make sure if you do want to attend, you can do so now. And we will get back to the next question that I have up here, which is, does the BRRRR strategy work in the Canadian market?
Yes, absolutely resounding yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Value add, that's where you're going to make a lot of your money right now. Value add, buy distressed properties at the right price, add value, taking into account who's going to be living in the building, how much rent you can collect, spend accordingly. You do not have to put high-end finishings in an apartment or a house that's located in an area where you have low-income earners.
Just make sure that you do your numbers right. You should do your numbers the same way you would do a flip, except that instead of selling it, you're refinancing it. So make sure that you do your numbers properly.
We really preach about the numbers, don't we? We have a record. Numbers.
Investment real estate is only about the numbers. There's no emotion. It's all about making sure that your numbers work.
Yeah. I'm like Rob. I've purchased properties without looking at them because the numbers worked. I don't care what the color of the flooring is or the walls. If the numbers worked, give her.
Yeah.
You know, I cut cable because of HGTV. They're evil. Don't watch HGTV.
Yeah, they're very deceptive. Those shows are very deceptive.
Very. So speaking about HGTV and those shows, next question I have here, where's their demand? So what country or region when it comes to rentals? I'm assuming this is for income properties for multifamily.
Gosh, I would, from what I'm hearing, I mean, I'm not in every market across the country doing research, but pretty much most major centers are crying for rental properties and of some kind. So you need to look around and see what's happening. There's a lot of rental inventory being built. So I would say, you know, just do a little bit of research around your home area and see. Certainly, you know, we have a demand here in Western Canada. I know there's demand in Eastern Canada as well.
There's
the Maritimes to some extent.
There's huge demand in most major Ontario markets for rental housing. Just make sure that you do your numbers because the numbers don't work in most markets.
Okay,
When-
next.
Oh, when you start to break $100,000 a unit for multifamily, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to make a property like that cash flow. You're really, you have to understand when you're going into a market, just because somebody says the market cap rate is 5%, that doesn't mean that you can make an investment property work in that market. It means that the average selling price is at a 5% cap. If that's the case, they may be turning around and when you do your numbers, you may have to put 40% down or more in order to make that property work. Just make sure that when you're getting into it, real estate is a long-term investment and you do not want to find yourself in a negative cash flow position.
Okay, next one we have on here. Where are some other places outside of Korea can you get to analyze which markets to choose? I guess when you're just looking for stats in a market, when you're trying to find what is the best market to invest in. I know that's going to depend on the strategy, but just in general, are there any other resources that you would suggest to recommend for getting information on specific markets?
In Ontario, you're going to have a very difficult time cash flowing positive on most of the province. There are opportunities if you go north and west of North Bay, with the exclusion of Sudbury. So if you're in Ontario, there are opportunities in the communities north and west of North Bay. But if you're going to try and make a property cash flow in Ottawa or London or Toronto or even Windsor now, you're going to have a difficult time.
In Western Canada, you can still find properties in Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, that will cash flow. And there's still opportunities out there for sure. Winnipeg, there's a lot of rental property there. You do have a lot less friendly landlord tenancy act there, but it's a bit better than Ontario and Quebec. And you can still take half a month's rent for a damage deposit. But there's a lot of older inventory, similar to some of your markets in Ontario and the Maritimes. And certainly the Maritimes, there's, cash flow properties in some of those locations. Again, you just need to do some research, get out, look around. Stats Canada, CMHC, great websites, tons of information on them to go to and do some research. Just start checking around, just doing some Google searches and see if you can find a little pocket someplace to go to.
And if you think that a market is good, start writing to the realtors and asking for financial statements, and then fill out your spreadsheet and start to see whether you can make something cash flow. There's nothing like the time spent doing your numbers. Ask for financial statements, and don't be afraid to make a stupid offer. If you look at something and you say, I can make this cash flow at this number, have the conversation with the owner, have the conversation with the realtor and say, look, in order for me to make this work, this is the number that I'm going to offer. Is this going to fly? And see what they say. It's a crazy market, but don't let yourself be governed by what everyone else is telling you. Make sure your numbers work.
I'd say one thing is the only way in real estate you're ever not going to get a deal is if you never put an offer. So don't be embarrassed if you have a low offer. If that's what the numbers dictate, that's your offer. That's it. And if you put in enough offers, at some point in time, you will get a yes.
Took me 10 months to get my first yes.
And I think we looked at almost 100 properties. It was in between I can't remember the exact, between 80 to 100 properties, and put out probably close to 10 offers before getting one accepted. So next one, I think we've answered that one. Okay, how do you make multiple offers in a day that are on MLS? Do you recommend using one realtor for all of that, or contacting the individual listing agents and going through them?
Always have your own realtor representation and put all the offers in through them. I put in 20 offers a day. You can do DocuSign. The realtors can set up, templates and PDF and just copy and paste. You put your basic information in and just fill in the stuff for each individual properties. Once they get a system, if you're going to do that on a regular basis, that's what the realtor should be doing.
Okay, I think this one can be answered kind of quick. How does rent-to-own work? Would you need a conventional loan down the road?
So rent-own typically, from an investor strategy, I'm assuming. So I tend to find a tenant buyer first that is motivated to get into a rent-to-own. They can't get financing due to credit repair, or they don't have enough money for down payment, etc. And I work with an investor that comes in and puts the down payment and gets the financing. So I use OPM, other people's money, and OPC, other people's credit. We buy the property. We usually get a 3-year mortgage on the property, work with the tenant buyers for a 3-year term to help them build their credit up, build their down payment. And then the tenant goes and gets a financing at the end. Be prepared that very few of the tenants are going to qualify for CMHC financing. Probably majority of them are going to get subprime lending of some kind in the future, because they don't always have enough time or whatever their motivation is to get their credit score up to 650 to 670 or higher in order to get good traditional financing. But that's kind of at a high 50,000 foot level how the rent-own would work. I have done what we call sandwich lease, where I find an investor, for example, usually, who has a property that they're tired of being a landlord on. I personally joint venture with the owner, go find a tenant, put the tenant in and do a rent-own, again for usually 3 years, and then have them buy it out at the end of 3 years. I find, though, I'm not as successful with those because the tenant doesn't get a chance to choose the property. With the tenant first, the tenant chooses the property, and I usually have a better success rate. That's my personal experience anyway.
Agree with Shelley. And we have all kinds of challenges with tenant buyers, because no matter how much you coach them, no matter how much you tell them what they need to do, they're in the situation they are for a reason, and they have a hard time correcting their lifestyle to fix the problem. We have had a couple of situations where we've had to extend the rent to own, and we've had an investor willing to extend it a couple of years. I've had a couple of nasty conversations with investors who were not happy that we were requesting an extension, and have not wanted to extend. And I've worked with them to try and explain to them why we're doing rent to own and why we're helping people, and not have them look at it from the money they're leaving on the table.
Okay, next one we have here. How do you determine, we get this one a lot. I think, Robert, you and I have answered this for a few people, but how do you determine if it's better to buy a home now to live in an area that is more expensive, like Auschwitz, for example, or buy rental properties in more affordable markets, for example, Windsor, and continue renting until you build more cash flow?
I tell my kids rent. Their first purchase of a home or a rental property, it should be a rental property. It shouldn't be a home for themselves. They can stay living with us if they want, or they can rent an apartment, but their first purchase should be a rental property.
Yeah, and I know I've had the same conversation with people. You know, if your goal is to become a real estate investor, I'm sure a lot of you have read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, but your personal home is a liability. It's not an asset because you pay every month, you know, taxes, insurance, utilities, etc. It does not pay you. So if you are looking to invest, then buy a property that is an investment property. And I would tell my kids when they're at that age the exact same thing.
And kids don't listen.
No, they don't. Not when they're your own. Sometimes when you're telling other kids, they listen. But yeah, so that would be the answer to that one. Let's kind of scroll through here. Okay, so here's an interesting one. If you are starting out as a real estate investor, is it advisable to put it under a corp, which we did answer that. My accountant told me to still put it in under our name when he purchased 2 properties. What are our options now if we want to put it into a corporation, and what is a cost-effective way to do so? And we did discuss bare trust. Obviously, you'll have to pay a lawyer to have that drafted and everything like that, but that would be one way to go about that. How do I register for the course? I did put the link in chat. I will repost it when we get towards the end there if you missed it. Just give me a chance scrolling through. Okay, and another question. Okay, somebody asked about the date. So if you know which dates you want to attend, if you can't attend July, you can just email. I'll put the email in the chat. Email events@cashflowtribe.com and just let the team know that you want to attend August instead of July. And that is not a problem. Next question. Bye, Nina.
Or you can give my, I was already replying to a few people. If you want to use my, they can send me an email and I can get them the information.
Okay. Yeah, or you can email robert@cashflowtribe.com. All right. Okay, you are welcome. Okay, so here's one. What do you recommend to the rental property that purchased at, I'm guessing that's prime price in February when the interest rates reach 4 to 5% and it will not cash flow anymore? So somebody that purchased a property, I guess near the peak of the market, and I assume, I'm not sure if it's variable, this is from Mary Lou, if it's variable or fixed or what the situation is. But if they know as they have to maybe renew the mortgage at 4 or 5%, and it's not going to cash flow when rates could be 6%, 7%.
Right. So if you can extend the amortization out on your mortgage to reduce the payments would be good. So any way you can add any income to the property by either increasing the rent on the property or adding an income suite, renting out the garage, something that you can get a little extra cash flow to come in. If you need to sell the property because you can't afford to subsidize it, then maybe incent the new buyer to come in and hold seller financing or something to help you. You might be able to turn it into an Airbnb and make it work, but you do have down days on Airbnb, or you might go and turn it into some kind of a specialty rental property, where you furnish it and rent it out to, I don't know where the property is and what location, rent it out to a special interest group. Perhaps get into furnished where you rent to executives because you usually get a better, higher interest rate or rental rate in that kind of situation. Or perhaps you might work with a group that works with perhaps special needs people or people that are adults, roommates. Sometimes they get subsidized by the government and they get paid, fairly well. to do those kind of rental properties. You know, or somebody with closed brain injury. There's some group homes that set up for those type of things. Sometimes you get better than average rent for those. So you might want to change your tenant profile to be somebody different that you can increase the rent and get, you know, more income in the property. You just need to look for every possible creative way that you can get that income up on that property.
Follow-up question, how do you connect with special interest groups?
Do some research around your area. Check with, I'm just trying to think here. Some friends of mine rent out to like a group home where people are special needs, but they can live on their own to some extent. They have somebody in the property that's like a guardian that oversees them. And they get free housing and they get paid a salary by the government. And those are run by different government programs. So you just need to check around your community to find out about, you know, like adult roommates, you know, I think that's what that one is called, is adult roommates. And just do some research. Check with your local community groups in your health district to see if there's some, you know, special interest groups that have special needs for a rental property, and see if that's something that works for you or not. Best thing is Google it and just make some phone calls around your area.
Awesome. And we're now just past 8:30. So I just want to, you know, thank, you know, Robert, Nina, I know she had to drop off, Shelley, and Rob for this evening. I think it was awesome, a lot of great information, and would like to congratulate everybody that was here. You know, again, as I always say, deciding to spend your evening listening to any of us talk about real estate means that you guys are serious about moving your investing businesses forward. And, you know, it's great to see. We all love sharing our knowledge, our experience, and talking real estate with you guys. And hopefully we'll get to see a few of you. I know, Sam, you're going to be there July. I'm not sure, Winnie, I heard you might be coming. But a few familiar names. Mammy, hopefully we'll get to see you in August when you're able to be there. Daryl, we saw you in London, but would be happy to see you, I guess, on the 15th beforehand at the networking event. Yeah, great as always to be able to share with you guys. And we'll be doing some more of these as the markets keep changing, news keeps coming out. And we can provide you guys in the CashFlow Tribe community with value information, education, knowledge. And if you see us live, a lot of fun. All right. Well,
Have a great evening, guys. Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye,
See you,
everyone.
everybody. Have a good week. Thanks, Kurt.